time stands still for no one, and that includes exclusives. With the latest Bethesda title hitting Xbox Series X and Series S consoles after a one-year PS5 exclusivity deal has come to an end, this next-gen only title has some catching up to do. With Arcane once again delivering their title using their Void engine to power it, it is identical to the PlayStation 5 and PC versions we covered last year. This means that the Series X has the same 4 modes to choose from, just like the PS5, and like PC and PS5, you need to restart the renderer when you swap between ray tracing on or off. As I covered before, a bit fiddly, as you have to manually quit the game rather than it quitting itself. The Series S has a little less on offer, but more on that later. The ray tracing mode, which delivered ray trace sunshine bathing you in ray trace shadows and ambient occlusion, the extra depth and contact hardened shadows it offers, and overall stronger visual impact, is identical to the PlayStation 5 settings, which were a rung or two down on the PC's best due to that ambient occlusion having quite a dithered stochastic impact and then being picked up by the TAA. It can look a little noisy in certain points, specifically when shadows and AO move quickly. Like that PS5 mode though, it also targets 30 FPS as a maximum frame rate. The quality mode in the offer here turns all these settings off, though performance is now increased to a 60 FPS maximum. The target resolution is the same though, DRS engaged on both modes, which can hit 2160p and drop down to 1836p. This is often the count you will see in the ray tracing mode and quality mode, although I did catch a slightly lower point of 1800p in that ray tracing mode. This is identical on Series X and PS5. The visual reduction can be evident at some points and invisible in others, or at least close to. Aside the removal of all the ray trace visuals, this setting remains identical to that mode, with LOD, height map flaws and shadow cascades all being a match. One odd issue I did note though, and maybe even a bug, in fact a PS5 patch came out just as this video was rendering, so I had to quickly add this comment in. The FSR option may be being used on the Xbox consoles themselves, but certainly in the ray tracing mode on the PS5 it has no sharpening filter applied, meaning the image, as you can see here, zoomed in, can look softer than the Series X. To show you the impact this can have, I've actually injected some sharpening here to the capture, and you can see it almost matches the image quality of the Series X now. I do suspect this is an omission or an error in that mode, as it doesn't appear in the performance and quality mode, as they both have that CAS sharpening filter active on the PS5. The performance mode is visually identical to it though, and it allows the DRS to actually scale to a lower level now, below that 1800p level in fact, now dropping down to 1260p as a low point. Often though, it hovers around that 1440p, 1620p level, meaning IQ is a little softer and not as sharp as the other two modes, but the increased fluidity and input response is equally, if not more noticeable, certainly from that ray tracing mode. The fourth option is effectively VSync off, which then requires a VRR mode to be enabled on your screen, which otherwise, if not, you end up with the screen tearing all the time, which is visually very unattractive and distracting. With VRR enabled though, the mode is by far the fastest and most responsive, and now targets a fixed 1080p, but can now hit 120 FPS. Meaning we can see if it stresses the CPU or GPU out of both machines a little more. And this presents us with some interesting results in performance. But before that, how does the Series S mode stack up? Well, unsurprisingly, the resolution takes a huge beating, with only two modes on offer that both run at a maximum 1080p, and in addition they also run DRS. The quality mode seems to always be at 1080p, but it may dip below, as it does say that in the menu. The performance mode again is often 1080p, but I did count a dip of 900p from my counts. As always, this could be lower at certain points, but likely brief. Visual settings match the Series X in quality mode almost, with some minor changes on the tessellated ground over the same mode on PS5 and Series X, and it obviously runs with a much lower resolution. The performance mode now makes some more cutbacks. LOD and shadow cascades are significantly reduced over quality, and shadow map resolution is also lower, as are some other resolution related effects, meaning this is the worst looking mode of the lot. But without side by sides, it does not make a drastic difference over the quality mode in general play, and this is all the modes on offer here. With the Series S offering no ray tracing option, likely due to the lack of memory and bandwidth compared to the Series X and PS5, it does continue the trend of it missing out on next gen features, but the most important thing is the Series S offers two great 60 FPS modes, which means you get to enjoy the smoother gameplay and benefits of its bigger brother. The lack of a 120 FPS mode is almost certainly GPU related, as that pixel fill rate and bandwidth are the reasons the Series X and PS5 have to drop to 1080p to run this.
Let you see yourself out.
Yup, we dated. Whoa, why are you doing this?
And that takes us to performance. The ray tracing mode is a perfectly locked 30 FPS on both consoles. It did have a few frame pacing issues at launch on PS5, but they were patched out later, and as you can see now, both of them have no issues at all. So at least if you do turn this mode on, you'll get a completely smooth locked 30 FPS. But it does feel quite slow and certainly cumbersome to control compared to the other modes. Performance is a fully locked 60 FPS on both Xbox and PS5 with no issues at all. The only issue I did have, and it's definitely a bug on the Series X, was it did judder at one point down to 30 FPS when an OS call was made to an achievement, and I did get this issue which cropped up in the ray tracing mode, but a restart fixed it. That was it happened once. It's hopefully a bug that the team can pick up on, so if you do get it, just restart the game. The quality mode though can dip on both consoles, hitting the mid-40s, but being very close to the VRR threshold means you could actually turn that on and it feels almost identical to performance mode. But in my opinion, VRR is best saved for the ultra performance or performance plus mode, which I'll get to at the end. We can see that the Series X can have between 5 and 17% frame rate advantages in quieter sections here over the PS5. And in combat and action, they both dip to similar levels, although again, it's usually around 5 to 6 FPS faster on Series X.
How is he here?
See? Now someone got hurt! Die already! You...
Huh? What?
Which would end this performance analysis, but there is one more mode, that performance plus mode, which gives us another look at the consoles running as fast as they can. But before we get to it, let's talk about the Series S, and it's really a case of nothing to see here. It must be applauded that the team have put two modes in, and I'm sure their far more exhaustive performance profiling in that quality mode must show up some dips worse than I found, which is one single frame. But as it stands, performance and quality mode are a locked 60 FPS with nothing to see here or to worry about, and it probably has a good amount of headroom to spare. Yes, it misses other modes, but in reality, I think the best choice has been made here, and Series S owners get a rock solid performing title as a result. Which brings us to the final mode. That 120 FPS Performance Plus mode enables both Series X and PS5 to run as fast as they can, meaning 8 millisecond frame times are the fastest we see. Without a VRR screen, it'll just tear itself to death. It looks horrific, so I do not recommend it if you don't have a VRR screen, but it is at least an option if you want to go for the fastest input. If you do have a VRR screen though, then you get the best of both with no tearing and the fastest performance and input. The cost is LOD is slightly reduced, similar to the Series S performance mode. As such, we can see that as close as I can get in these runs, the Series X again has a performance advantage to the PS5, between 5 and 20% here at most. Now these are likely GPU areas, with the wider pipeline of the Series X benefiting here. Over the runs though, the average delta between the Series X and PS5 is 6%, but at certain points the Series X can be 10 to 12 FPS higher. In reality though, they both keep close enough to that 80 FPS level of 25 milliseconds, meaning this is by far the fastest and smoothest way to play. And indeed, going back to that ray tracing 30 FPS mode from this does feel very sluggish, and it's actually quite a dramatic shift that I struggled with. And to wrap up, loading, which is slightly faster on the PlayStation 5 to around 2 seconds, 11 versus 13. Hardly the fastest next generation title, but certainly one that loads quite a lot, so it does stand out. The Series S is pretty much identical to the Series X. The other thing is, be aware of that FOV setting. It does improve the visual quality of the title, but the more you push it out, it will obviously cause scaling and dips in performance. So that's probably the reason why we have so many options, because you can push it all the way up to 110, which does help the viewpoint quite a lot in a fast-paced title like this. Meaning, in summary, Deathloop is the same game it was a year ago. The Series X matches the PlayStation 5 with ever so slightly slower loading and slightly faster performance in 2 modes. The option to add in a VRR mode in that ray trace version for me would be of huge benefit, as in my opinion, extending that DRS range would make that mode a real choice. But as it stands on both Series X and PlayStation 5, the increase it offers over the reduced input response and refresh means for me, in a fast FPS title like this, it's simply too impactful to go back to it. The Series S does lose out on those ray tracing modes, but both offer a seemingly locked 60 FPS, and it's still a great version of the game. The lack of ray tracing is only bad on paper, as I noted at the moment, I would not recommend that mode even on the bigger consoles anyway. With Game Pass bringing the game to many Series X and Series S owners, it can offer short bouts of fun. But sadly, this does not offer the charm, the style and engaging gameplay of Prey from Arcane, but it is still a good way to kill some time. And if you like these deep dives into game technology and performance and all things Pixel related, then keep it IGN Performance Reviews, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Okay, I'm gonna drop you now.
What the fuck?
No!